Well, the answer to that, of course, is the termination of lobbying and campaign contributions, and that's all by the government giving money to each participant in congressional and senatorial elections, and the proviso that you can't begin to campaign at least 2 months prior to the election. And then we can have some kind of sanity. Everybody will have to talk about the issues. And I think that should go a long way toward fixing some of the problems, at least for the time being.
In fact, today I heard an advertisement for Barbara Boxer, our United States Senator from California. What a wonderful job she's doing, how she's financing, research on biological and diseases. And the advertisement was financed by the pharmaceutical industry, because Barbara Boxer is consistently voting to give money to the pharmaceutical industry. So they're running ads here in California saying how wonderful she is. Well, they don't mention he's wonderful because she gives them our tax money. Go right ahead, Bob.
It's the same old thing over and over again. And the system's got to be revamped and changed and thoroughly investigated, and if that doesn't happen, I tell you, it's going to be awful, because the public is on the edge. Unemployment is continuing to slowly go upward. The only way that companies can make money is to cut employees, which make up about 75% of the cost of doing business, and so that's going to be perpetual, and the economy's not going to recover. We'll have a slight blip for maybe a year, and that's it. It's over.
But they're already talking about they're going to
stimuli again and whatever else they have to do.
Well, they're already talking about the necessity for another stimulus bill. They haven't even spent the money for the last stimulus bill, and they're talking about another stimulus bill. And then what happens later this year when an awful lot of people across America have run out of their unemployment benefits? They can't get a job. They have no unemployment benefits. Then what happens? We already have, I think, 32 or 33 or 34 million people living on food stamps in the United States. What happens when we run out of money for food stamps? Because right now we're having to borrow probably between $3 and $4 billion every day. The government's having to borrow that much just to pay its bills. There's no way we can pay our bills. We are borrowing money, and yet, of course, we're spending money like a drunken sailor. And really, we shouldn't say disparage drunken sailors. At least they have a certain element of responsibility. At least they work for a living.
Well, if they don't extend unemployment benefits indefinitely and food stamps, they're going to have a revolution in their hands. I mean, the people are mad enough as it is. We now have the highest poverty rate in the world among, major countries. That's probably some 50 major countries. Our poverty level is higher than that of Turkey and Mexico. I mean, people just don't realize how many people are in serious trouble.
And not only that, but we have the highest prison population in the entire world. 1 out of every 32 or 33 adults in the United States is in prison, probation, or parole. How did that happen? Well, you got an awful lot of innocent people in prison, unfortunately, because you have a corrupt court system where the whole idea is to win, not necessarily whether you're innocent or guilty, but you got to win the case. And when the prosecuting lawyers withhold evidence and falsify evidence and accept perjured evidence to win the cases, well, what would you expect in a nation that's turned its back on God, where there is no right and wrong, there's no fear of God, and we have real problems in America, Bob.
We sure have.
Well, what's happening?
And the incidence of law enforcement lying is terrible.
Well, we're going to be back here in just a moment. Our guest is Bob Chapman. We'll accept your calls at 1-888-2-4-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. But you can see what happens when a nation turns against God, when there are no moral standards. That's what they teach our kids in school. There is no God, there's no right, there's no wrong. You do what you want to. You decide what's right and wrong. You can see what happens when a nation does that. Well, this is Dr. Stan. Our guest is Bob Chapman, and Bob just says that nothing's going to get better as long as the banks refuse to lend money. And the big banks have lots of money. They can borrow it from the Federal Reserve at 0% and lend it out at 10 to 15%, but they're refusing to do that. Why? Because they want to bring down the economy. And certainly the small banks are afraid to loan, and a lot of them are in real trouble financially. And of course, the big banks are too big to fail. We're going to back them up with our tax money. The little banks we're letting be gobbled up. We're talking about literally hundreds and hundreds of the smaller banks going under here. We keep talking about 200 or 300 banks going down in the next year, smaller banks, but they're all being bought up simply by hedge funds or by foreigners. Well, our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295 here in the Central Coast of California. And we have Dave calling in from Vermont. Hi, Dave. How are you doing?
Hi. Very, very well. Thank you. Good evening, gentlemen. I have a question about the audit bill. Let's say it gets passed in October, and then it goes on to the Senate, and there'll be a delay there also. And let's say that it does pass the Senate, and then the GAO then takes over with the audit, and it will take them. How long will it take them to do the audit? And then, what I'm saying is it's going to be an awfully long delay before we see any results from it.
Good point.
Well,
what are your thoughts on that, Bob?
That's true, but first of all, I don't think the GAO is going to do it. They've been doing it, and the people aren't happy with what they've been doing, so it'll be another agency. And then it'll probably take at least 6 months, so mid next year, before we see anything concrete coming out of there. But it's going to come. And maybe we'll have to wait for total results to the end of next year. But at least we'll have it. It beats nothing at all.
And I think the important thing is, Dave, it's an educational process. People all across America are learning that the Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. People are learning that here's an organization that's so powerful, they're above the law. They've told the courts, we're not going to abide by your judicial ruling. They've told Congress, we don't have to answer to you. So I think people are beginning to understand that there's something rotten in Denmark. And, of course, what we have to do is get enough people to understand the degree of corruption in the banking service. If you haven't read my series of articles on Andrew Jackson's farewell address, the May-June articles are posted. The July will be out in a few days. Read them and understand we're reliving exactly what happened in 1837. Anything else, Dave?
No, thank you very much.
All right, God bless. But don't get discouraged. Everything takes time, but this is the first time in my memory there's ever been any serious talk about going ahead and having an audit, and people are beginning to learn we have a corrupt banking system that is controlled by an elite. Of course, beyond that, eventually we hope to teach people about the brotherhood of darkness and the spiritual forces which are energizing what's going on. Well, again, our number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. Our guest is Bob Chapman, certainly one of the most knowledgeable people about what's going on financially, because he's been in the financial markets for the better part of 50 years. Well, Bob, certainly as we look and see what's happening today, and we see, certainly the gross domestic product, GDP, has actually shrunk for four successive quarters. They keep saying, well, but it wasn't down as far this last time as it was before. Oh, should we feel good about that, or should, certainly we must be having more production than we were, or are we?
Well, I think they're preparing for more warfare. and the troops that are coming out of Iraq are going into Afghanistan and then Pakistan. And, it'll continue that way. They have to have war in order to divert the attention of people from the financial and economic problems. That's part of the facade that is being perpetrated in order to cloud the financial and economic problems. The facade being the argument over health care and cap and trade. These are diversions, believe me. They might not seem like they are, but if you think of them in that context, you'll know that they are.
Well, the United States is the largest debtor nation the world has ever seen. How long can we continue living on borrowed money? I mean, you and I couldn't do that. Can the government do that indefinitely? Well, our guest has been